In the trailer?
In the trailer.
It was a night of terror at a trailer park. A bizarre combination of flood and fire made a hellish nightmare for both residents and rescuers.
I was asleep when I woke up and everything was floating away.
Fighting the fire had to wait while rescue crews evacuated residents from the trailer park.
You know, it said it's just right to our doorstep.
They fought chest-deep water and a swift current to bring people to safety. Sarah Piesky was carried through the floodwaters. Her husband Ivor was rescued in a rubber raft.
I had to go out that front window with that awning over it. It was kind of hard.
I was on top of the bed. I didn't want to leave. I was watching all the fires burn, and I asked the Lord to stop the fires.
Okay, going on that rope.
Firefighters had to hook a hose to a submerged hydrant before they could get water on the fires. They think gas lines broke when the trailers floated and that a spark set off an explosion. This night of flames and flooding was overwhelming for some of the victims. Many lost everything they owned.
The water took my dog away and about took me away.
Ed and Sarah Matthews went to a nearby Chuck E. Cheese restaurant with other flood victims to dry out and warm up. Everyone here felt lucky to have survived the rushing water.
You just can't get your footing, you can't hold on, you just don't know what to do.
The current was so strong you couldn't even stand up hardly. You know, it was. I was holding on to a tree and had a shirt wrapped around a limb just to hang on to the branch.
The Matthews survived the flood, but their home was destroyed by flames. Again and again, rescue crews searched through the trailer park to help victims get to safety. Many are elderly. They were taken on buses to a shelter at a school. While the trailer park was the worst spot, there was severe flooding all over town. Most of the campus at Colorado State University is underwater. Almost every major intersection was clogged with high water and stalled cars. More roads were blocked by a train that derailed when a section of track washed out. Most of the flooding is along Spring Creek. It's normally just an ankle-deep stream, but hours of pouring rain turned it into a churning torrent. Its banks are now littered with debris from the torrent that surged through the center of Fort Collins. Cries of help rang out from terrified residents of the trailer park. They were trapped between the double danger of fire and flood.
You know, it said it's just right to our doorstep. No warning, no nothing.
I was asleep when I woke up and everything was floating away.
Fighting the fire had to wait while rescue workers waded and swam through chest-deep water to find people at risk of being swept away. Some victims escaped through windows and were carried away in the arms of rescuers.
I was on top of the bed. I didn't want to leave. I was watching all the fires burn, and I asked the Lord to stop the fires.
Watch the hose.
Firefighters had to hook a hose to a submerged hydrant before they could pump water onto the blazing trailers. They think the fires were started by gas leaking from lines that ruptured when the trailers floated. This night of flames and flooding was overwhelming for some residents. Many lost everything they owned and almost lost their lives.
You just can't get your footing, you can't hold on, you just don't know what to do.
The current was so strong you couldn't even stand up hardly. You know, it was. I was holding on to a tree and had a shirt wrapped around a limb just to hang on to the branch.
Daylight brought receding waters and a better look at the full extent of the flood's fury. Cars were left piled on top of each other. Trailers were crushed and crumbled. Search crews scoured the banks of Spring Creek looking for victims, hoping they would find none. And as they cleared away the debris of one demolished trailer, they found a surprise, a soggy survivor, a scared but safe cat. Many of the flood victims are staying with relatives or friends. The Red Cross has already closed one shelter, and only about a dozen people stayed at Rocky Mountain High School last night, including Scott Ruff and his 4-year-old daughter.
I just look at the kids. You know, they're setting the example for everybody around here. You know, looking at their spirits and how they're taking it.
People have been donating lots of clothes, toys, and other things, but the Red Cross would prefer cash donations because flood victims have no place to keep anything.
That's the thing, no place to put it.
The shelter has been keeping track of missing people, and this morning there was good news. The last person believed to be missing from the trailer park showed up at the shelter. Manuel Areola was staying with a relative. All the flood victims began the tedious process this morning of filling out forms for disaster aid. They'll get vouchers for food and clothing and help finding a new place to live. At first glance, it looks like a neighborhood garage sale on Wallenberg Drive. But then you notice that everything is coated with mud and muck. This street runs along the banks of Spring Creek. Almost every home here was flooded.
We had 7 feet, came to right there.
Greg Knoll has cleared everything out of the basement now, except the mud.
Everything, and we had pictures and library down here, a lot of, just memory stuff.
As bad as it is here, these residents feel fortunate their homes are still standing. People evacuated from the mobile home park have lost everything. Some have spent 2 nights at a Red Cross evacuation center.
I just look at the kids, they're setting the example for everybody around here. We're looking at their spirits and how they're taking it.
At a local church, flood victims began filling out forms for disaster aid. They'll get vouchers for food and clothing and help finding housing. A lot of business owners need help too. Dozens of stores and shops were flooded. At the Fort Collins muffler shop, they were cleaning up the mess. Some of their machinery was ruined, but the owner was eager to get back to business.
We're very lucky. We'll get cleaned up. As soon as they get the electricity on, we'll open up. No beef.
I had my mother's sewing machine and an old table stand.
Some residents were overcome with emotion just from the anticipation of seeing the havoc left behind by the flood. They lined up with boxes in hand and were escorted into the park a few at a time to recover what they could. Many fled the flood with just the clothes on their back. They hope to find identification papers they need to apply for disaster aid and to start rebuilding their lives.
I hope to find my birth certificate. My billfold was in there with all of my credit cards, my driver's license.
My passport and my green card mainly that I left in there. I didn't have time to take them. I was more worried about saving my cats.
Many hope to find family photos and irreplaceable heirlooms.
My great-great-grandmother made me some things before she died, and some things that she made and some things that have been in the family, because I'm from Hungary.
Each family had about 20 minutes to grab what they could. Some were overwhelmed by the sight of their demolished homes.
Terrible, terrible. Mudville. It was terrible. Worst day of my life.
For Jim Carroll, it was hard to describe the devastation in the park.
Kind of weird to go back and see it. I can't even believe how far it went, and just the damage that it's just a mess. There's just stuff everywhere, I can't believe it.
They lined up with boxes in hand, children too young to understand the reality of how their world has changed, and elderly people for whom the reality is overwhelming. Many fled the flood with only the clothes on their backs. They don't even have a piece of paper to prove who they are.
I hope to find my birth certificate. My billfold was in there with all of my credit cards, my driver's license.
Get in a single file, like Disney World, and head down the front of the building.
They wait patiently for their turn to be escorted into the park, a few at a time, to see what's left.
Whatever God wants for us to have, we'll have it.
This was the last time we saw Sarah Piesky. She was being rescued from the window of her mobile home while the floodwater surged and the home next door went up in flames.
Oh, my land of Goshen.
3 days later, she returns to see what can be salvaged from her home. Not much. Some pots full of muddy water, a few plants from her garden, and some books.
I don't like muddy books, but hopefully we can retrieve some of those.
Other park residents retrieve some family treasures, a Madonna, a cat, an autographed portrait of Ted Williams. A mud-spattered star-spangled banner shrouds a fence while residents shuffle through the muck of their neighborhood. The scenes of destruction are overwhelming.
There's not a window left. There's not a door. Nothing.
Terrible, terrible. Mudville. It was terrible. Worst day of my life.
You can see the water line right here. You also have to keep in mind that this trailer was floating as well. The water line was actually higher than this side here. And people were up on these trailers and had to be rescued.
It's as if a spoiled child took a swipe at a pile of toys. The incredible force of the water. This is Spring Creek today. This was where the water was trying to get through. The water was a wall that came over these tracks, derailed the train, and swept through the mobile home park. What determined that night who lived and who died? What determined this dress would still be on its hanger, gently blowing inside a destroyed home? A green boat from the Division of Wildlife ended up here, carried from 6 blocks away. And the underground drainage pipes that were supposed to carry the water were simply uprooted and tossed aside.
See over here, trailers just totally destroyed. Just ripped the skin right off of it. Again, people were up in these trees. They were rescued by firefighters.
It was sudden, massive, and happened in the dark, and it went for some of the most vulnerable among us. The pictures that tell us so much.
The frame of our trailer is up there.
Shelley Mann can only find a few bits and pieces of her life in the piles of debris that fill a lot at a city service center.
Yeah, our kitchen was up there. The bedroom is way over there.
Mann and her husband lost their home and almost everything they owned in Monday's flood.
You can't even think of what all was in there. It's devastating.
This is where the city hauled the wreckage of the most badly mangled mobile homes. It looks like a garbage dump, but there are treasures amidst the trash, family photos, slides, a child's teddy bear, the program from a dance in 1963, the ghost of a Christmas past, a Bible that's a holy mess. It's a jumbled hodgepodge of cherished mementos, the commonplace and the bizarre.
Everybody's lives are just scattered. All their business. It's awful.
It's an awful mess. Residents have until Sunday to find what they can, but what they find may well be worthless.
A necklace and some earrings. It's not worth even saving.
It's a warehouse of evidence of a flood's brutal force, a storeyard of memories of a horrifying night.
Our bedroom window backed up to the stream, and we watched it getting a little higher, a little higher, a little higher.
What's worse, the flood itself or this?
This.
The Boy Scouts of Troop 83 marched into the home of Marvin and Marlene Gerlach to do a good deed.
Without this help, we'd still be foundering. There's just no other way about it. These boys have been wonderful.
Monday night's flood ruined the Gerlach's family room and 2 bedrooms.
A lot of work they put into building their basement, and all of it was wrecked.
The flood caused the sewer to back up. It was 3 feet deep in the Gerlach's lower level.
It stinks real bad in there. It's nasty. The sewage just went right into it.
The scouts hauled out debris by hand, with shovels, with wheelbarrows, drywall, insulation. Everything had to be stripped away. It was hard work, but the boys were up to it.
This is going to make me sweat like a hockey game will.
Marvin Gerlach wiped his teary eyes as he watched the boys work. This job was just more than the Gerlachs could handle, and they were grateful to have the scouts help.
I think it's so fantastic that they would do something like that.
Well, I think they're the most fabulous workers in the world. I didn't expect this kind of a response, not ever, not ever. So it's just been miraculous.
It would take them a lot more time to do this by themselves. They're a little older than we are. We just help. We're Boy Scouts. That's what we do. We help.
This was just one group of scouts at one home. Helping hands are hard at work all over Fort Collins this weekend. Roger Wolf, 9 News, Northern Newsroom.
Outside the Philosophy Building and a half dozen other buildings on CSU campus, the flood damage piles up. Professors pull away what they want to salvage.
That's a lot of work, just this. His master's thesis, University of Chicago, there's another one filled with, you'll see, like, here's a paper.
The professors say this isn't just a pile of soggy books and papers, it's the work of an academic lifetime, and much of it cannot be replaced, like handwritten dissertations and theses and correspondence from colleagues.
I just didn't know where to start. Every piece of paper here, I mean, it is trash now, but every single piece of it means it's part of my career. It's 20 years of my career. And
Jay Neller's office is in the basement of the Philosophy Building.
Well, the first time I looked at it, I was up there looking in, and all I could see was my monitor floating in about 8 feet of water.
Jane's got a PhD in philosophy, but even so, she says, it is difficult to come to terms with all the destruction.
So, yeah, being philosophical, I don't know whether it really helps right now or not, but this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me, I have to say, in terms of my career.
And her career may suffer a setback, temporarily at least. Among the lost and damaged papers, her lengthy application for tenure at CSU. But the most cherished loss, she says, handwritten notes she took from lectures long ago. Knowledge that shaped her philosophy and her career.
That's the kind of thing that's just really all gone. That's what's really, I think, most devastating for the faculty here. There is no way to duplicate it. It's just a part of your history.
A part of history lost to the flood in Fort Collins. Ed Filmer, 9 News.
Which way to go?
I think we got it.
Took a couple of hours for them to find the old trunk under the flood debris.
Look.
Oh, this is gonna be bad.
Okay.
It's toast.
Yes.
Cindy Cooper Ryder's most precious family mementos inside.
Try to find him.
Oh, baby doll.
My baby doll.
My mom
has it
restored
all. Wait, now here's a good story. Mount St. Helens ash. It's dry.
But the laughter about the jar of ashes soon turned to concern about precious family treasures. Cindy's mother collected dolls. She died when Cindy was 14.
Oh, no. My mother made all these.
Almost everything in the trunk was damaged. Cindy found a few dolls she could save, but historic family photos ruined.
This is my grandmother in front of a picture of my mother. You can still see it.
Like many of the flood victims here, Cindy has no insurance to cover her losses. She does have a place to stay and food to eat for the next couple of months, but after that, she's going to have to rebuild her life.
Let me have it. Let me see.
It'll be a life without many of the things she's had all her life.
Oh, did you make it? What do you think?
Jeez.
A painting probably ruined. It would take a lot of money to restore it. Cindy's mobile home was picked up by the floodwater and slammed into a tree. She was inside but managed to get out and was rescued by neighbors. And like her neighbors, she feels fortunate to be alive.
The most amazing thing is that I'm alive. You know, this stuff, my house, all this stuff that I'm trying to salvage, that doesn't matter. I'm alive, and the people that I cared about that lived right by me, they're alive. And these are all that's left.
Alive, yes, but picking up the broken pieces of a lifetime. In Fort Collins, Ed Filmer, 9 News.
The storm that ravaged Fort Collins Monday night was indeed a monster, one of the worst ever seen. Record books that date back to the 1860s.
This is in the top 10 or 12 extreme storms that have been documented, and the largest one ever documented over an urban area.
The rain cloud that parked itself over the city dropped an amazing amount of water, up to 7 inches in an hour.
We have never seen that much in a gauge in 1 hour in any of the official stations in Colorado.
The rain was coming down so hard and fast Monday night on the CSU campus, it actually flooded the university's weather station. The paper graph that records rainfall minute by minute was washed out.
There's 13 inches, southwest part of town.
Duskin has been collecting reports on rainfall all over town, from rain gauges, buckets, garbage cans, whatever's available. This information will be studied for years to come, but it's already clear this was an historic event, comparable to the deadly storm that killed 145 people in the Big Thompson Canyon.
It's looking like a very close cousin to the Big Thompson in terms of rainfall amounts.
I'll be with you in a second with another swimmer.
Some people are wondering if all the extreme weather recently is a sign of a change in our climate. Duskin says no.
We can see storms of this magnitude occurring about every decade or so, all the way back through history. And so we're not seeing a whole bunch of them now, but we're watching.
And watching the weather is always good advice in Colorado. Roger Wolf, 9 News, Northern Newsroom. With weeds crammed into the wheel well and the truck bed looking like a muddy creek bed, this pickup is a sorry mess. It's one of about 40 Division of Wildlife vehicles destroyed by floodwaters. The rule of thumb is anytime water gets into the dashboard, the vehicle is totaled.
Just because of the amount of problems that will keep going on, 6 months down the road, as this water dries out, as the different electrical components corrode, that car could be a problem for quite a while.
The shop at Dellenbaugh Chevrolet is swamped with work this week. Dozens of flood-damaged vehicles have been pushed in and towed in for repairs.
Hopefully anybody that has water damage with their vehicle, don't try to start it. Call the tow truck.
Dittmer says a vehicle that's been in high water can be seriously damaged by running it for just a few minutes. If there's water in the engine oil or transmission, it can ruin bearings and gears. The differential should also be checked, and the transfer case on four-wheel drive vehicles.
When we pull spark plugs, if water happened to get taken in through the intake, it could sit on top of the pistons, and if you try to start it, it could bend connecting rods, things like that.
Cleaning up and repairing a flood-damaged vehicle isn't cheap. It may cost $2,000 to get this Suburban back on the road.
This car had manual windows, did not have power windows. That's going to help us. We don't have to worry about window motors.
But if you have comprehensive insurance on your vehicle, it should cover flood damage. Roger Wolf, 9 News, Northern Newsroom.